It's time for the Hockey Writers Grindline, a weekly show covering everything Detroit Red Wings. Brought to you by our own iconic top line of Wings writers. Sit back and enjoy The Grind.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Hockey Writers Grindline. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and as always, joined in by my defense partner, Devin Little. Devin, how's it going? We are into the preseason. We are, 2.5 games in. As we're recording this, the Red Wings are into their third game, and they're up 2-0 as right now over the Washington Capitals. And we're right in it. How's it going?
Boy, it's been a lot of fun watching Red Wings hockey again, let me tell you. Super excited to get going. Sorry to the viewers out there that were a little late on this one, but let's grind this one out, right?
Yes. We're a day late from usually when we record, but it's either Saturday or Sunday. So I mean, one of the days you'll get it in your timeline. So let's get moving to start talking about some good and bad in the last week. I mean, there's plenty to choose from since there was some preseason games and lots of good, actually, in my mind. Devin, a good and a bad from this past week.
One good, I'm going to highlight Nate Danielson. I think he's looked really, really good in the early going here, even going back to the prospects tournament. We've talked about it on the show how he in his draft class was one of the more NHL ready guys. I think at this point, the proof is in the pudding, right? He's looked really good against legitimate NHL guys. So I think he's gonna make make things interesting as we get into preseason and towards the beginning of the regular season here. Even today against Washington, he's playing on the second line with some legitimate NHL, some guys that are like definitely going to be on the team. So excited for him and for what he's been doing in the early going here. And then my one bad, I'm actually going to go outside of Detroit here because, like you said, Matt, I honestly think there's a lot of good and not a whole lot of bad right now. Just younger guys on other teams not getting an NHL chance, getting waived early on. The most recent one was Lassie Thompson from Ottawa Senators. Yesterday, Ty Smith from the Pittsburgh Penguins. They're both waived, both 23 years old out of the 2019 draft, both first-round picks. Both good young defensemen that, for one reason or another, just haven't quite found the consistency they need to be legitimate NHL or full-time NHLers yet. And it's as somebody who likes, who obviously gets really worked up about young kids not getting a chance for this Red Wings team. I don't worry, it's not just the Red Wings. I get worked up when I see young players not getting a chance with other teams too. But back to your regularly scheduled Red Wings programming on this show.
I do agree with that. They're all these teams kind of loading up on the veteran presence, and they forget that the young guys should need to get a chance too. And I don't know how these guys feel about that. I mean, they're developing. Ty Smith is starting to getting out there out of a prospect. He's not really a prospect anymore. He's starting to become just a young guy. I mean, it was just I was surprised to actually see him waived because, that's something that, I mean, the Senators are supposed to be younger. So, yeah. But, yeah, let's get back to Red Wings. My good, and I was going to say with Danielson, too, because he, like we said, in Traverse City, he was impressive. But now he's playing against NHLers and with NHLers and still looks impressive. Lalonde commented on his two-way game, his 200-foot game. That's great coming from an NHL coach, saying that he wants him back. Like he's waiting for him to come. He may not make it now, but he wants him to be in the lineup, and that's a good thing to have for such a young guy, right? We'd like to get him back soon. So it's like, how soon? We'll have to see. I don't know. I mean, not a lot of people thought Lucas Raymond was going to make the team out of camp, and he did, and he's still in the NHL. So I've said many times before about Danielson that he has the potential to break into the NHL a lot sooner than some of these other guys because of his defensive game. He is very good in that realm, and he could play on a third and fourth line and you wouldn't be worried about him. And that's, like I say, I don't know if it's going to be this season. We'll have to see, but he's sure making a case at this point early on in the preseason. So that's I'll just continue on that with a good. Yeah, I don't know if there's not a lot of bad I could say. I mean, I don't think there's anyone that's underwhelmed really. Even the newer guys like the Brinkat. Well, I don't want to go too much because we're going to talk about takeaways, so I will stop. But yeah, I'm not going to say really real bad. I don't have one this week, so I'm just going to go with a one good and leave it at that. All right, well, let's move into our the preseason training camp. Some takeaways from this past week, and I say lots of stuff to choose from. The Red Wings did win a game. Their first game they won. They lost in their second game. This game, it looks like they're well on their way to winning. They're up 3-0 now. Dylan Larkin just scored. And that, lots of stuff to talk about. So, Devin, what are some early takeaways from early on in the preseason here?
Yeah, early takeaways is that you always want to be a little wary about reading too much into the preseason. I think back to the 2019-20 season, the year where the Red Wings couldn't win any games, and I'm pretty sure they actually had a winning record in the preseason. If not, like I dare say they won like all of their games in the preseason. Like I think it's something crazy like that. And then they went on to have the worst season like ever. So you don't get too high or too low in the preseason, but overall, I think the Red Wings have looked much improved. And that was kind of the whole idea of doing all the moves that they did over this summer, right? I think the power play has looked really good. Dylan Larkin, the goal that you just mentioned, just took a look at it. It's basically a carbon copy of the one he scored in the first game against Pittsburgh. So it looks like Larkin's going to make a living and hanging out in the back door there. So that's exciting. And it's nice that they already have a play that they can go to that has worked now, right? Like, it's one thing when you're seeing good process, but it doesn't look like they have like they don't really know where they want to go. They just kind of have good movement. Well, they have good movement and they have a play that they want to execute on, and they're executing on it. So that's really good. And on the other end of things, penalty kill, I think, has looked pretty good too. And then overall, just like overall competitiveness and maybe just kind of being surprised by who's getting looks and who's playing with who. I mentioned Danielson up the top here. He's playing with, he's playing higher in the lineup than Jonathan Berggren is tonight. And that's a surprise, in my opinion. Because again, I think it just shows that Danielson is a lot closer than maybe some of us thought. William Wallender's playing with Justin Hall tonight. That's another guy that maybe he's getting a closer look than we thought he was going to get. And Simon Edvinsson continues to play a lot. Marco Kasper's looked pretty good. It's just overall, I can't really think of one player that's just looked bad. Mind you, we're only, like you said, Matt, 2.5 games into the preseason. How much room is there to look bad? But just, I don't care who you are, you've looked pretty good if you're wearing a Red Wings sweater so far, and that's encouraging. As we're kind of getting into this thing and we're starting to think about who is actually going to be on the roster, because we've talked about it before. For there to be surprises on who makes the roster and who doesn't, kids got to look really good, and they have, right? If the first 2.5 games are any indication, when it's time to make final cuts, it's going to be some interesting discussions.
It's going to be tough. I was saying about Nate Danielson. I don't know if they're going to let him, allow him to come in. He may get 9 games if he keeps impressing, that he'll get that 9-game trial thing at the beginning of the season. But I still see him going back to Brandon. I just don't really, unless he's like really that they think, okay, he's ready, he doesn't need to be in juniors anymore, then that he may stay. But I don't see it. I think he'll probably go back. Having said that, I really do think he can play in the NHL, even though he won't be scoring, probably won't be scoring at a clip where he would be in his prime. But He will be good defensively. He's already shown that. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's early, but at this point, he's looking like he should be making the team. And we'll just see how he goes for the rest of it here and how long he stays. I don't know. He'll end up staying right till the end, or they'll decide on it. There's some guys that have been sent back already. So, we'll see. I agree with the power plays look good. And also, seeing about that top line that we've talked about with Dylan Larkin, Lucas Raymond, and Alex DeBrincat. On that scoring play, yes, it was on the power play. So of course they're together on the power play. But they have been as a top line as well in the preseason here, and they've looked pretty good. So that may be the top line going into the season, which would be really fun. So we'll have to see if that ends up being the case. All right, before we get to our comment corner, which makes us return, we just go to our off the rush here. I want to talk. We've talked about Nate Danielson. This is a perfect question for this. It is a semi-comment corner. It comes from the comments. It's not part of our comment corner, but it's a quick one. Who does Nate Danielson remind you of? Or does he remind you of anyone? Is he just Nate Danielson? I mean, I hate comparables, but do you have one?
I kind of want to defer to our pal Logan Horn on this one. A player that he kind of brings up a lot when it comes to Nate Danielson is Dylan Cousins over in Buffalo. And I see it. I definitely see where he's coming from with that comparison. There's definitely some skill there. Not like, top tier elite level skill, but there is skill there, top 6 level skill. He is high. They both have high, their compete levels are high. And they're both, because of their compete level and their overall two-way play, they can be a pain in the neck to play against. And that's kind of one of the biggest reasons why Detroit drafted Danielson. So he's not as big or even like boxy as Cousins is, at least not yet. But I think that that's a pretty solid comparison. Again, not mine, Logan's, but gotta throw it out there.
I'm going to compare. Like I said, I just said I hate comparables, but I'll do it. I'm comparing him to Bo Horvat because I think he has that same type of all-around game. He may not ever be a top line center, and I don't think Bo Horvat's a top line center even now. But he's going to be that guy that you're going to be able to throw out in any situation, and he'll be able to thrive. May not be that high-end scorer, even though Horvat has a 30-goal season under his belt. He'll be a consistent 20-25 guy, but also someone that you can just rely on in any time of the game and the last minutes, whatever. I see that. I don't know if that's a true comparison, but I see him that type of player that you're not going to see him in that 80, 90 point range in points, but he'll be valuable nonetheless. So I'm going with that because I just because I've seen Horvat so long, he does remind me of him. Okay, before we move on to our comment corner, here is a message from the Hockey Writers.
Interested in writing for the Hockey Writers? If you have experience writing about hockey, are passionate about the sport, and are looking to take your writing to the next level, the Hockey Writers could be the place for you. Here at THW, you will have the opportunity to hone your craft at one of the world's largest and most respected hockey publishers. You will have control over what you write, be able to seek out media credentials, and be supported by a large network of writers and editors. Plus, you'll get paid for doing it. If you're interested and want to know more about team openings and requirements, please visit the Write for THW page on the Hockey Writers website. A link to that page is also listed in the description.
Right, as we said, let's restart Comment Corner, and we're gonna go hopefully have this every week during the season here. So keep those comments coming in the comment section. We will get to them. These are a couple questions that have been one from this past episode from last week, and another one from the one before that. So let's start with going back to Traverse City. And this is from Lee Sorty 7264. Thanks, Lee, for commenting, and keep them coming. He asks if any rookies, now we've got the preseason to talk about too, if any rookies have moved now on your rankings that you released not that long ago. Has any of them changed your mind of maybe either going higher or maybe even lower? Is there anyone that's done that?
Yeah, but so here's what I would say. I typically don't let um on if we're being honest about it, a meaningless prospect tournament and then even preseason games that don't count for anything except
Mhm.
for, reps. Typically don't let those types of games sway me. Um, so with that being said, if I were to like make a rankings again, it would be the exact same order. Now, with that being said, am I looking at Nate Danielson with maybe looking at him a little bit closer and saying, okay, now I see it. Yeah, absolutely. Uh, there's a reason why I only do rankings once every 6 months. Because it gives you enough time to see players go through ups and downs and see who's for real, who's not, who's struggling, who's thriving. 2 weeks isn't enough. If I did a ranking every month, it would be kind of pointless.
Yeah.
Um, so with that being said, a player like Danielson's on his way to climbing up the rankings. And I mean, if we're being honest, we're kind of hoping that Danielson climbs up the rankings just because that means Edvinson or Casper is off the list because
Yeah.
they've graduated. But regardless of that, yeah, you kind of want to see him jump up. You know, if you recall, I had ASP Axel and Pelika ranked ahead of Danielson when I did my rankings. Still stand by it, but for anybody out there who is adamant that Danielson is in fact better than ASP, I'm definitely I'm you know I think he's putting me on notice clearly with his play there. But to be fair, Sendin Pellikka's doing pretty good over in Sweden right now. So it's not just Danielson who's putting up a show. So yeah, to answer the question, no, not really. But this is definitely when I'm starting to look and see who's going to be moving when I do it again in January.
It's true. I mean, I probably wouldn't move anyone either. I think Danielson has maybe made a case that he could be one of those risers, like you said. But it's just too early. There's just so many guys that, yes, preseason, you're also playing against lesser competition most of the time. You may impress one game, and then all of a sudden you're playing against some tougher guys, and all of a sudden they disappear. And that's just the level of development they're at. So I mean, I think it's probably, like you said, it's something you think about, but it's not something you're going to say, yes, Danielson moves up 3 spots like that. That doesn't, no, I mean, it's just too small of a sample size, and it's against different competition. You need a bigger timeline to talk about it, to be able to move guys like that. But yeah, Danielson's definitely on the radar to be one of those that could definitely do it. All right, Don, you've got another question here, and you've had a couple over the last couple of days. Although past couple episodes, I did grab yours for the off the rush as well. So with this one, and we did this earlier on, predicting the top 3 lines. But now that there's preseason involved, training camp, we may have a bit of a clearer picture on this. So, Devin, predict the top 3 forward lines come opening night.
Yeah. Um, um so this is going to be interesting because honestly, the player that has really added a wrinkle to this is Nate Danielson.
Yeah.
Um, because the last couple of games he's been in the top because obviously, answering this question, you want to look at what lines have already been used, right? It kind of that's an indication that the coaching staff is, considering these lines for when the games are for keeps.
Mm-hmm.
But so far, you've seen this kid, Nate Danielson, consistently in top 9 roles.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes you wonder, does he factor in? And then if he does, who's factoring out?
Yeah.
Because you know, you can put in a player, but somebody's got to come out. And as we've talked about plenty of times already, the depth chart is it's loaded. It's going to be tough to crack this roster. Now there is a recent development, like as we're recording here, that might play in, might not. By the time this episode drops, we'll probably have a better idea of what's going on here. But it sounds like Robbie Fabry is out of tonight's game. He went down with some sort of injury. Tough luck for him. Obviously, he's had a heck of a time staying healthy throughout his career. Hopefully, it's not anything serious, but if he's in the lineup, I think he's in the top 9. If he's out of the lineup, well, then that's a spot, right? So, with that in mind, and mind you, I definitely feel like I'm forgetting somebody here. Um, but alas, here we go. Um, my top line right now is going to be DeBrincat, Larkin, and Raymond. Uh, it's the second time that tonight's the second time that they are using that line. They used it early on in training camp, so it's definitely a line that is under some consideration, right? Um, and even if it's not what they start with, you're going to see that line together at some point. It's too obvious to not do it, right? Second line, and maybe this is the third line, but it's just the second line that I feel like I could put together and I feel pretty reasonably confident in it, is Michael Rasmussen, Andrew Kopp, and David Perron.
Mm.
It's actually the third line from like months ago when we
Yeah.
talked about what the lineup might be. That was my third line. Keeping those guys together, they did actually play together. I think the couple Thursday against the Capitals.
Mm.
So again, that's a line that at least they're thinking about. And then my third line, tentatively, is Robbie Fabry, JT Compher, and Jonathan Berggren.
Mm.
Now that being said, if Fabry is out, I don't think it's out of the question to shift Berggren over to the left side, and maybe Nate Danielson is the guy who
Mm.
slides in on the right. Um, and it's crazy that I'm talking about that because I feel like I said it last week or recently that Marco Casper's the guy who is gonna be really pushing for a roster spot. And to his credit, I do think he's pushing, but Danielson's just really stood out. And
Yeah.
I there's also the fact that, as you mentioned early on there, Matt, if Danielson's not playing in Detroit, he's got to play in the WHL. He doesn't have the option to go play in the AHL. And so they kind of have that Rasmussen thing from years ago about like, is he too good to play in the juniors? Because
Yeah.
if he is, yeah, I guess he's got to be in the NHL. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Whereas Casper, he can go play in the AHL. They can send him down there and he'll play top 6 minutes for sure. They just have more options with Casper than they do Danielson, and I think
Yeah.
that's playing in Danielson's favor at least right now. So yeah, to close out this, what are the top nine lines? Honestly, I don't have a clue, but that's my best guess after 2.5 preseason games.
I don't know. I am definitely on board with that top line. I think that's probably what we're going to see on opening night. It's something we've talked about on this show. We're saying that's going to be the top line, and it looks like they're thinking about it as well. The second line, though, like you said with Rasmussen, he's looked really good in the preseason so far. So, definitely making a case to be that second line guy, even though we were pegging him as a third line guy. And Perron and has looked good too. And yeah, Danielson's really throwing a wrinkle in this. I don't know. And Fabry's looked really good in the preseason, which is and he had a couple goals the other day. And it's unfortunate that he may be injured here again. Hopefully, like you said, it's not long term and it's just a short thing or precautionary. Like they do those things in preseason, like, oh, okay, with this, it's something we shouldn't be having him play with. We'll just tape him out of the lineup. I think that hopefully that's the case, but he has had some bad luck with injuries. So, I mean, you hope that the bad luck's just not continuing. But yeah, I'm on board with Danielson being on that third line. I think it will be really good. He's already played kind of in that role already in the preseason. It would keep him a bit, I don't know if you want to say sheltered because he is good defensively. I mean, I think he'd probably be fine against some bigger, better players, but in the third line role, he's not going to be up against a lot of really good guys. So that could be a good spot for him to start the season on if that's how they go with it. I like that line. I think that could be a really good one because JT Compher's, he's shown that he's been able to be good in a second line role, being on the third line. And then, well, Berggren we've known as being really good too. So that could be a good two-way offensive line. So
Yeah.
I like it. I would actually like to see that on opening night. We'll see. We'll see if that actually happens. But yeah, right now I think it's up in the air just because of how Danielson's shown so far. We may be a little clearer if he wasn't. That was like for sure going back. But yeah, that's going to be an interesting storyline to watch as we go through. All right. Okay. Off the rush. I do want to keep this on Danielson. I mean, this should just be called the Danielson show. But if he does stay all season with the Red Wings, what do you see his point totals being?
Well, it's going to depend on where he plays, right? If he's consistently in a bottom six role, I think you're looking at a stat line fairly close to what Berggren did last year. He had 15 goals and 27 points. Pulled that off my top of my head. Damn, I'm good. So like 15 goals, 30 points, maybe even 35. Danielson's pretty versatile. I think he could play consistently like on third line, whereas Berggren was on the fourth line most of the time last season. But if he's there, I think it's in that range.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if he's maybe more middle six, maybe that's when we're talking 15 to 20 and 35 to 45 points. I don't, if he makes the team, that's impressive. If he stays with the team the full season, that's even more impressive.
Yeah.
So honestly, like as long as he at the end of the day, I don't foresee Nate Danielson being in the Calder Trophy race this season. Crazier things have happened, right? But like, so I'm not going to sit here and be like he's going to put up 70 points, and Connor Bedard's going to have him. He's going to be looking over his shoulder at him.
Yeah.
No, I don't see that happening. But I could see a really solid 40-point season out of Danielson under the right circumstances.
I do see it, and then the thing is I'll just stand on my pedestal and just say that I kind of projected. I did say that Danielson could play in the NHL. I don't know if I said this season. I did say earlier than everyone thinks. So I mean, I could be right on that. I don't know. We'll see. I like Nate Danielson. I don't want him in the lineup if he's not ready, obviously. So I mean, if he shows that he's ready for the NHL, then just may as well do it, because if he doesn't have anything else to prove in the dub, then he should be playing in the NHL. So it is a tough thing, like you said, with the AHL being not an option. It's either the NHL or he's going back to junior, while Casper can just go down and whatever. I mean, he can play. So right now it's looking good that he could make it, but I still say if he does, it's the 9 games and then he goes back. But we'll just have to wait and see. All right. Well, there's another episode of the Grind Line. We'll have a lot more to talk about next week, as preseason will be coming to a close pretty much. And the regular season is just going to be right around the corner. And we'll see where this Nate Danielson storyline will be at next week, because I think we'll have a bit of a clear picture. Maybe if he's still with the Red Wings, then we're gonna get really talking about him making the lineup, because that's when a lot of rosters are pared down. So if he's still with them, we'll have a good indication. But make sure you're checking out all of our Red Wings coverage at thehockeyraiders.com. We've got still those previews coming out. We got takeaways from the preseason. Lots of content coming at the Hockey Writers. Give this video a like if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel. Get going, subscribe below. Keep those comments coming, because we'll have comment corner throughout the season. So we got to give us some content to come through. And until next time, we'll see you on another episode of the Grind Line.